Welcome to another great video giving you some helpful information to make it throughout your teaching experience. Now that you've read about the gradual release of understanding by design, the UbD process, and the gradual release responsibility process, and how those kind of go together, just want to kind of overview what your major takeaways should be. Then I'll come back in another video and show you what does that look like in the lesson plan. So here is the DIY school, and in a DIY school the students have complete responsibility. Basically they're doing it all alone. Teacher, there's no responsibility at all, not even as facilitator. The sudden release of responsibility is also very important here. This is where most of our students on our classrooms experience. This is what they normally experience. The teacher does it and then the students do it alone, especially in math or in science, those areas, and even sometimes social studies. And in some classrooms, and most of you have expressed that you know that I do, we do, you do it alone. However, Fisher and Frey have given another step and have kind of changed the steps to make it more of a gradual release. And this is a model of success for all students. So let's take a look at this. Here you have I do, we do, you do it. Looking at the new responsibilities here is that the teacher, of course you have your focus lesson, and the teacher guides the students. Then you have the guided instruction. So in the focus lesson, the teacher has taught the students exactly what to do, modeling. That's your modeling section. After that, the teacher walks the students through the guided instruction. So you're going to do the same type of concepts, but now they are doing it with you. So you're kind of all doing it together. Hence the words, we do it. You're doing it together. Then you have the collaborative. This is the part that's very different than some of us are used to. The teacher is actually stepping back and giving less airtime to themselves. So you're taking that facilitator role. And the students are working together to collaborate. After the collaboration, then the students practice with the skill or strategy, whatever you're trying to do, by themselves. So that's the model for success for all students. Notice the key point here is all. All right. So let's take a look at this. This is a very profound statement by Deacon Pearson. The gradual release of responsibility model of instruction stipulates that the teacher moves from assuming all responsibility of performing a task to a situation with the students assume all responsibilities. So I think of it like when you go to train for a new job. Someone shows you how to do it, then they guide you through it, and then you're normally not stuck by yourself. You normally have someone that you're working with, like a mentor. And then you do it independently. You do the job independently. This is gradual release of responsibility, basically. A few things that I want to tell you is that Pearson and Gallagher, they actually suggest that this cognitive load shift, because that's actually what happens. There's a cognitive load shift slowly and purposely from the students to the teacher is very important. The students actually are directed by the teacher, where there's direct explanation, thinking aloud, modeling. Then you actually move to the modeling where the teachers and the students are kind of doing it by them together. So they're working together, that we do it together. That is then followed by what they're actually saying is independent practice. And that's where the students do it together collaboratively, and then they go through and work on it individually. Depending on the lesson, depending on the content area, depending on the strategies that are being used, depending on if it's the first time that you've taught the students this or the third time and it's more of a review and you're using the strategy to meet the literacy skill, the gradual release process can take over a day, a week, a month, and longer, depending on the age level too. Gradual release responsibility is also one of several effective delivery methods. I think in science, you're studying the 5E, which is something that I've done several professional development workshops. And again, that's a type of gradual release of responsibility, but designed in a different way, based on science and that discipline. Then you have direct and explicit instruction, and those are more other types of effective instruction, but nowhere of the gradual release. And then you have the constructivist model, which you've learned in your previous methods classes. So let's take a look at what it looks like. And you've already kind of done this. Teacher establishes clear purposes. The lesson is less than 15 minutes. So when you're up there doing the I do, less than 15 minutes. You're providing the students with information such as what a skilled reader, writer, or thinker would do and what's the process. Sometimes this looks like direct explanation, modeling, and think alouds. I know in my 6th grade classroom, I rely heavily on modeling and think alouds for my students so they can see the thinking process. Then we move to the guided practice. Guided practice is the we do it together. This is teacher and student. Can be very well done in small groups, but it can also be done in whole groups. This can be a place to differentiate. Ideal. Okay. This is also a good quick assessment for you. So let me tell you what this looks like in the classroom. Let's say, because so many people follow the I do, we do, then they do it together and then they do it alone. However, the process does not have to stay. So, I'm sorry, that's my dog. You don't have to stay in this format here. I could be easily meeting with a group of students and giving them their guided instruction, where other students are trying out the strategy to practice the skill in the collaborative instruction. And I'm going to each group, working with them. That's an interchanging of the process. So the process doesn't have to be I, we, together, and then you. It can move. All right? That collaborative learning, it's accountable talk. It's another way of assessment for you. It's going to be very messy, and sometimes it can be loud and chaotic for a new teacher if you're not ready for what could happen. So you're trying to think of all these expected student responses and what could go wrong and what misconceptions could come up. And you don't really develop those skills until later on into your profession. That's why you put more planning into your lesson plans. And then you have the independent practice. This is where students apply information that they've learned by authentic tasks related to instruction that they've actually received, and this is another form of assessment. A great way to check for understanding, you can do quick checks throughout the lesson. Thumbs up, down, middle. Whiteboard responses, response cards, accountable talk, journal responses, the Cornell note summaries, board races, and then exit tickets. Now let's look at roles and responsibilities in each section. Here you have direct instruction, I do it, and you see what the teacher's doing. And you look at what the students are doing. They are actively listening, they are taking notes, and they ask for clarification. So let's think about the ask for clarification. My students are wonderful students and they're 6th graders. However, their mind goes constantly with questions. That can easily change my less than 15-minute focus to now a 30-minute focus. This is what I have students do. I provide every table with a stack of sticky notes. And on their table, if they have a question that's just eating at them and I have not answered it in my conversation of modeling and think aloud, then they're allowed to ask that question at the end of my time of talking. At that time of talking, I go through the guided instruction with them. And sometimes I actually flip it. Some are doing partner work, or not partner group work, but collaborative work. And then while they're doing collaborative work, I'm going around giving that guided instruction. So I'm guiding each group. Here in the collaborative learning, I don't know how these have gotten swapped, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't actually have to stay in place. And I'll give you an example for that in just a minute. You work with classmates, you share outcomes, you collaborate, you move, the teacher moves around the room, the groups, you help with clarifying any confusions or misconceptions, and you provide any support. Going back to the model, sorry, it's really slow today. Going back to the model, I have done where I've done the focus lesson first. Then I've done the guided practice, the guided instruction. Then I've actually had the students do independent instruction. Then they move to collaborative instruction to help with misconceptions. Then we move with another independent after they've corrected misconceptions and so on and so forth. I've done that in math, and I've also done that in ELA. Here in another example, I put independent practice first, where you had to come in and you had to open up your lesson, and all teachers think, oh, let's do something fun with lights and fireworks. No. This could be simply 2 problems on the board or 2 questions on the board, and students are independently thinking those through. And they're independently thinking those through with whatever strategy you've given them. And this is very structured and can be very different for teachers who are new year. But just know this gradual release, the GRR, is not something that has to stay in place. They all don't have a certain place. They can come in different forms as far as when do they come into play in the lesson. And Fish and Frey tells you that in their readings that you've done. Great YouTube video here, and I'll put it up on the board for you if you haven't already watched it. And this is actually a discussion from Fisher on the gradual release of responsibility. And then here are some great resources for you if you need them. But that's just a brief sketch and something you're going to use throughout the 4 lessons that you're developing. And 2 of those lessons you're implementing within your classroom that you're observing. So I hope this has been informative, and you'll catch me on another video. Thanks.